Q&A time, let's go! So for those of you out of the loop, today's video is a Q&A session to celebrate the channel hitting 1,000 subscribers. People have been leaving me way more questions than I ever expected. Seriously, like, I had friends on standby promising to ask me questions just in case nobody else did. Happily, that was not necessary. I'm going to try and answer all of these. There are a ton to get through, so let's just get stuck in. I hope you enjoy this peek behind the curtain. Let's get started with the craft-related stuff. Okay, question 1. Did you love crafts as a kid? Yes. In fact, my earliest properly clear memory is when we were moving house when I was about 2 years old, and I just got set up on a folding table just inside the front door where my mum could keep an eye on me, and I spent the entire day making a Christmas card featuring a cotton wool snowman. As I got older, I got into other things: origami, pottery, friendship bracelets, finger knitting, and if you count art as a craft like I do, drawing the same Celtic knot patterns over and over again hundreds of times. I guess, like that day when I was 2, all I've really wanted in life is just to be left alone to make a mess. What is the first craft that I got into? So as we've seen, I was a very crafty child, and I guess that technically means card making is my first craft, or at least the first thing I remember doing. But I think in terms of things that link to crafts I'm still really into now, it was probably the finger knitting. I would sit for whole weekends at a time at my grandma's house just finger knitting. And the weird part was I didn't know how to turn a row, so I just made these absurdly long lines of finger knitting, and then at the end of the day I'd rip them all out and then do them again. Slightly concerned that makes me sound like a crazy person, but hey, we're being honest here. If I was stranded on a desert island and could only have one craft, what would it be? Well, my first thought there is boat making, probably. Serious answer, I think all of my current crafts would be pretty useless in a desert island situation because of lack of supplies. So for this question to make sense, if we're talking about a craft that I currently do, we would also have to assume that there is some kind of magically replenishing stash of supplies. That's just logical. So in that case, I choose 3D printing. I could make so many things that would be useful in a survival situation, and also essential supplies for that would be a computer and electricity. So since by our logic those are magically replenishing, that would be really useful and make living on a desert island much more bearable. And I know some of you are probably thinking 3D printing doesn't count as a craft, so for you, I choose crochet. Do I have a favourite craft, and why? Well, I think we all know I'm going to struggle with this one. I've mentioned a few times, I think, that it tends to go in cycles with me, and it's mostly seasonal. So in autumn and winter, I'll tend to be more into my yarn crafts, and specifically crochet, because while knitting and crochet both make really big cozy things that I love, crochet does it faster, and I'm very impatient. Cross-stitch tends to come back in a big way for me over summer, partially because it's nice lightweight projects that don't involve having half of a work-in-progress blanket strewn over you while you work on them, and partially because I really gravitate towards bright colours when I'm choosing projects, and it just feels natural to work on those in the summer, you know? If I absolutely had to choose a favourite craft, I think it would probably be crochet again, which is a surprise to me as much as it may be to you. The speed of it is nice, yeah, but also you can make cozy winter things, you can make lacy summer things, and you can also make so many practical items. I think that would be my best bet for getting the variety that I need from one craft. What's my favourite hobby, and if that's too hard, what's my favourite project? Now, I've kept this separate from the previous question because hobby is different to craft. I don't know what the intent was, but I choose to interpret it that way. And to that I say, my favourite hobby is creating things. But that's just crafting, I hear you cry. And yeah, maybe, but for me, creating things encompasses all of my crafts, learning to art, and also coding. Yes, as far as I am concerned, coding is just as creative a hobby as any of these other things. I used to be more focused on the web development side of things, but the last few years I've pivoted into video game development, and it is super fun. You might not consider knitting and game dev to be the same hobby, but you know what? I pretty much do. Okay, and favourite project. This is basically impossible. In yarn crafts though, it's my Portland socks. These were made from yarn that I picked up in Portland on a US road trip, and they just bring back brilliant memories of that trip. I can't pull them on without having a little smile to myself, so they are my favourite. In cross-stitch, I've just finished my favourite. For all I bang on about how much I love Satsuma Street patterns, Alpine is the first one I have actually managed to finish off. I just love it to absolute bits. Of course, there's Sebastian. He's got to be on this list because just look at him. He is so cute. And following on from the whole creating things talk, this basic platformer video game that me and Dave worked on together. It was part of a 2-week game making challenge. It's based on an inside joke and I just love that it exists. It makes me laugh every time I think about it. I completely failed to pick a favourite there, but you know what? It's impossible. Okay, which craft would I like to learn next? There has actually been some discussion about this in YouTube comments and Instagram DMs lately, and I think next up is going to have to be polymer clay. It seems like a natural next step, and I'm not entirely sure what to expect from it or whether I'll take to it as well as I did air dry clay. I'm such a mess already. Unfortunately, so is the clay. But you know what? There's only one way to find out. I also want to try diamond painting. Also, latch hooking looks fun. Why can't I just pick one thing? Do I teach myself hobbies or do I learn from family and friends? To be honest, it is mostly internet. With Reddit and YouTube, you can learn pretty much most things you need to. I tend to be a little bit intense when I'm learning new things, and even if I did have someone around to teach me, they would soon go mad from my incessant questions about the underlying why of everything they're trying to show me. Just ask my driving instructor. My grandma did knit when I was a kid, I remember, and she must have been the one who taught me finger knitting, although I don't really remember that. But mostly, even as a kid, I would learn things from books rather than people. I was real big on the library as a kid. Nerd! What's the least and most expensive craft I do? How long is a piece of string? This depends on so many things, and I actually had a video planned talking about this more in depth. Right now my gut says that sewing is my most expensive craft, but that's because I keep falling in love with all of these actual fabrics instead of doing what I should do and practicing on things I've found in thrift shops and old bed sheets and things. You can start knitting or crocheting for about £5, but you can also end up making yourself a hooded long cardigan in fancy yarn for about £100. You know, it just depends. If we're measuring in terms of entertainment time bought, I would say cross-stitch is probably up there as one of the cheapest, because it can cost quite a bit to get all the materials together for a big project, but if you're going to be stitching on it for about 5,000 hours, it works out pretty efficient. On the other hand, if we measure in terms of startup cost, then soap making would be one of the most expensive, because before you can make soap, you need to make sure you have duplicates of a lot of things. You can't use the bowls, spoons, mixers, etc. for soap and then also use them for food. You need to invest in separate ones. So I think it cost me about £70 to get my first soap loaf with the actual soap supplies, which are pretty cheap, but also the outlay of all of these separate supplies. I'm going to stop waffling on this one now and elaborate in that video when we get to it. Are there any crafts I won't try or would like to but can't? The only reason I would really outright say I refuse to try something is if there's some kind of moral objection or if it's super dangerous. So something like leatherworking, for example, is maybe not for me because I'm vegetarian, but on the other hand there are lots of fake leathers, so why rule it out? One thing I would love to get into and can't really is pottery. I had a little toy pottery wheel when I was a kid, which in hindsight I must have just used air dry clay or something with it, I'm really not sure. But actually now I'm thinking about it, maybe I should just get a toy wheel again because that was really fun. Alas, to do grown-up pottery and make actual food-safe items, you do need access to a kiln, which I do not have. I watched this one Twitch streamer. I kind of stalked her Instagram and found out exactly what kiln she has at her house. £3,000. Yeah, pottery is not happening for me anytime soon. Would I consider making an intro to knitting video for crochets? Well, obviously I think you know the answer to this is yes, don't you? I am on it. Albeit in my typical slow way, but I am on it. Have you made anything Eurovision related? Any patterns? Okay, that's a no on patterns because basically all you would have to work with are the flags. Anything else would probably be trademarked by the EBU, the individual artists, whatever. I am staying clear of that whole thing. But I have technically made something Eurovision related. In 2016 we needed some emergency decorations for a last minute party and we found this white tree at Hobbycraft and I decorated it with these weird origami decorations just in the colours of all of the different competing countries. Some of them have fallen to bits or been lost in the intervening years, but yeah, there is currently a Eurovision tree in our living room. Do I still make willy warmers? That's right, I used to sell these babies over on Etsy, but let's just say there are a lot of creepy people out there, and I soon stopped and have no intention of restarting. Do we have a shop for the dice? Not yet, is the answer there. I'm not sure exactly when we will. We're in a bit of an R&D situation at the moment. But for now, we do post process videos and dice porn over on Instagram and TikTok as Luckbringers Dice, so go follow us there and you will be first to know when something actually goes up for sale. Also, Dave will be really happy that you asked that question. Thank you. How did I decide on my clothing colours list? Okay, for anyone who doesn't know, I set myself a few crafting rules this year just to be a bit more intentional about what I'm making, and part of that is that I'm supposed to stick to a defined colour palette. The simple answer to this is just that it's colours that I like. But let me elaborate unnecessarily. When I was growing up, I kind of felt like other girls had been given this handbook on how to girl, and mine had got lost in the post. I never really understood about like hair, makeup, clothes, how to walk in high heels. I'm almost 38 and I still don't get that last one. So I've kind of cringed my way through life to a certain extent and only quite recently broke free of that. Now my plan is to just not think about what colours are supposed to look good on me. Does my favourite mustardy yellow cardigan wash out my pale skin? I honestly don't know. I honestly don't care. The colours I chose are just colours that I like looking at and will enjoy working with, and whatever anyone else thinks about how I look, that's on them. That maybe wasn't like the most helpful, actionable advice in the world, but it is the truth, so yeah, there you go. Do I ever feel overwhelmed? How do you choose what to work on and what to add to the mental list? Oof. That's a big one. I actually also had a planned video about this, so first of all, thank you for validating that my video ideas are actually of use to at least one person out there. I'm actually a very easily overwhelmed person in general, not just where crafts are involved, so I've got myself some elaborate coping mechanisms. There are 2 quick tips I can give here that have really helped me. Step 1, reframe. You do not have too many projects to ever get done. You have so many fun ideas, you will never be bored. See how that works? Step 2, and I must insist on this, no mental lists. Write things down. Even if you just have a note on your phone that's like, all of the fun craft projects I would like to do one day. Gets it out of your brain, one less thing to carry around with you, do it. I showed off my Notion setup for tracking my craft projects recently, and that includes plans and ideas as well. Whatever you do, just get things down on paper in some way and then go back and do step 1 some more. I will ping you when a more detailed video comes out on this. And on that somewhat bossy note, let's move on to the personal questions. But first, yes, it is Editing Michelle here in my comfy and totes professional pyjamas, coming at you with the details of our giveaway, because apparently I got so carried away answering your questions, I just totally forgot to mention anything about this on recording day. As you know, myself, and consequently most of you, subscribe to the philosophy of making all the things. Combine that with the fact that most of you live halfway around the world, and it kind of makes doing a giveaway for a specific craft item really tricky. But I have a genius solution that is totally better than a digital gift card. We'll just tailor the prize to the winner. I'm going to be asking entrants to leave a bit of extra info in their comment on this video. If your name is drawn, I'll then use the info in your comment along with anything else I happen to already know about you to shop for a personally selected crafty gift. I love trying to find the perfect gift for someone, and I'm sure you probably quite like getting free stuff, so this should be fun. There are of course rules. You can check down in the video description for details, but the general gist is this. Entries are open worldwide and will be accepted from when this video goes live up until 8 AM BST, that is UK time, on Monday morning. That's Monday the 23rd of May 2022. I will then draw the winner at the start of next week's video. To enter, you'll need to leave a comment on this video that includes 3 things. The code word swordfish, your country of residence, and any crafts that you are either big into or you've been thinking about trying. And of course you should be over 18 because I will have to ask for your contact details. Okay, good luck to anyone who decides to enter, and I look forward to flexing my gift buying skills. Back to it. What did I want to be when I grew up? I'm honestly not sure I ever decided. This question always confused me as a kid. I used to say teacher because I think usually the person asking me was a teacher and a part of me thought they would like that answer. And then I started saying scientist because somehow I'd got it into my head that scientists make a lot of money. I don't know, so many problems with that one. And then as a teenager, all I wanted to do was be self-employed anything because I'd had an existential crisis at school one day about not being in control of my own time, and I just could not cope with that concept at all for a good year of my life. This all kind of comes back to my answer to that very first question though. I think genuinely, all I have ever wanted in life is just to be left alone to make a mess. That's it. How did you meet Dave? Okay, well, the short and boring answer to this is online dating. Sorry. Slightly more detailed answer, Dave messaged me first. I had just had a run-in with a major creep on that website, so I didn't answer him straight away. So he broke with all established internet dating tradition and he messaged me a follow-up. But he managed to do it in a non-creepy way, so it was okay. We chatted, I discovered he also liked Eurovision, and I'd recently built a life-size arcade cabinet in the kitchen, and I mean, what more do you need to know, right? I was pretty sold from that very first conversation, I remember. He took a little bit more convincing, but we got there in the end. What do I do for a living? And Marie has guessed freelance web dev. Well, ding ding ding! Okay, well technically not, but I used to be a freelance web dev. Self-taught one, naturally. And then I became a not freelance web dev, and that kind of gave me a lot more confidence in my coding skills because I was actually working with real people in a real company and they didn't seem to notice that I didn't know what I was doing, so of course now I had that newfound confidence in my coding, I decided I was done with it and went back to uni to study product design, which is basically professional crafting. I graduated from that a year ago, and what to do next is kind of still a bit of a grey area. Suffice to say, I gave myself a bit of a financial cushion and I will figure it out. Can I be a professional crocheter and cross-stitcher and YouTuber and soap maker and game dev and dog cuddler, please? Is that a job? If that's not a job, that should be a job. Okay, now this one gets real personal. Do I have ADHD? The short answer to this is I don't think I do, but let me explain. I do, obviously, I think, identify quite strongly with a lot of the behaviours you would typically see in a certain kind of ADHD. But the thing with ADHD that I'm sure most of you already know is that the behaviours that you see can also be caused by other things that just look the same on the outside but have completely different internal causes for that behaviour. And one of those other things is autism. I'll give you a moment to recover from the utter shock I'm sure you're feeling that I am not a neurotypical person. Now, it is of course possible to be autistic and also have ADHD. I'm not saying for certain I don't, but the behaviours that I identify with just so happen to be the ones that are, yeah, they're just slap bang in the very middle of that particular neurodivergent Venn diagram. So I can't say for sure, but honestly, just for me personally, I don't see the value in being assessed for that as a separate thing. This one made me smile a lot when it came up, I'm not gonna lie. I love how we just sort of naturally glom onto each other and find out people. It never fails to amuse me. I'm not going to use up a ton of time in the video talking about this, but what I will say is I am completely at peace with this about myself. I do not see it as a negative, and I think you've seen by now I am not afraid to be myself and get weird with it. I do, however, wish I'd found out younger because young adult me was a mess. Still, don't make really aggressive eye contact with me if we meet in real life, and don't ever, under any circumstances, call me on the phone unexpectedly, and we will be fine. Okay, on a lighter note, how did I become a fan of American football, and why did I choose Green Bay? Okay, this question concerns me because it reads like it was written by a Bears fan, and now I'm not sure how to think of you. I'm joking, but am I though? So let's work backwards. When I was choosing a team, we basically just watched a load of games at random for a few weeks and just saw if anyone stood out. I very nearly became a Bengals fan actually, but the Pack won me over because their name is kind of ridiculous and also they wear some really nice colours. Yeah, that's literally my thought process there. The reason I was choosing a team in the first place is because Dave had introduced me to American football with Super Bowl 47. I am not a sports fan, like at all, apart from snooker, so I really didn't think I would get into it. But I really enjoyed how it's basically a turn-based strategy game. And then in turn, he is a football fan because it was on TV over here back in the 80s when he was growing up. And also the Miami Dolphins were a really good team around then. And so that's why he's now stuck with Dolphins fandom all these years later. Poor guy. It's actually not as rare as you'd think to be a UK fan of American football. We get 10 friends together for a fantasy football league every year without too much trouble, and even here, in a small town in the middle of nowhere in northeast England, it's not unusual at all to see someone wandering around wearing merch. I've even seen 1 or 2 Packers fans. Fact bomb. What do you like to do when you are not crafting or watching Lord of the Rings, Eurovision or football? Okay, this makes it sound like I watch Lord of the Rings way more than I actually do. I guess I'm developing a reputation. Oh well. The real and boring answer is that most of my time at the minute goes on video editing, and I really need to get faster at that because it's taken over my life and is not sustainable. But in my truly free time, you will be totally unsurprised to hear there's tons of things I get up to. Gaming, obviously, and game dev, taking excessively long bubble baths, being addicted to Reddit. I've been trying to learn to art with varying levels of success. And on an evening, we like to settle down and watch usually some kind of obscure niche reality competition show. That sounds bad, right? But most people watching this have probably only seen US and UK versions of these shows, but I challenge you to watch LEGO Masters Australia and still claim that these shows cannot be wholesome and life-affirming. Go on. I'll wait. Okay, you thought that one about ADHD was a heavy hitter? Who is my favourite hobbit and why? How do you decide something like that? Wow. I mean, my heart obviously says Samwise Gamgee. Straight up. And I don't think that's going to be controversial at all. But my boy Fatty Bulger always has a special place in my heart as well. Imagine you are the one of your close friend group who is left behind. You know exactly what is coming to your door, you know the stakes, and you are basically there as bait. That's one brave hobbit right there. And then, you know, Frodo gets a lot of flack, mostly from people who've only seen the films. And I get that because movie Frodo is like a little bit wet. But put yourself in their shoes. If I was in a Sam situation and my best, most loved friend needed me to do something so horrendously dangerous and important, I genuinely think I'd give it a go. I'm not saying I would be any use, but I would try my best for my friend. On the other hand, if I was in a Frodo situation, immediate cowardice. I'd be slipping that ring back into Gandalf's pocket when he's not looking, I'd be flushing it down the drain and denying all knowledge. There's just no way you would get me out of the Shire. And if by some miracle you did, and I made it as far as Rivendell, absolutely not a single chance I am volunteering to carry it any further. I don't care about the fate of the world. No way. I'm just a coward, and I think he deserves a lot more respect than he gets. That part in Two Towers when they see the army coming out of Minas Morgul and Frodo knows that's it. The quest is a failure, the world is ending, his friends are either dead or about to die, and nothing he is about to do can save them. He believes that to his core, and yet he still keeps going with the mission. You know what? I can't pick. Although, as much as I loved The Hobbit as a kid, it is definitely not Bilbo. Sorry. Okay. Dream holiday destination. You'd think this one would be an easier one to answer, but actually, I only ever really had one big dream destination, and that was Iceland, which I saw a photo of this view on the front of a travel magazine back when I was in college, and for the next 13 years harboured this desperate desire to see that view in real life. And we did. There are obviously other places I'd like to see, Norway, Australia, New Zealand, quite a lot of the beautiful Eastern European countries, but I think if you told me I was only ever allowed one more holiday, I would probably spend it on a nostalgia trip, because our holiday game has been on point. Bavaria was absolutely gorgeous, and it was our very first proper holiday together, so, you know, obviously special significance there. Iceland I would definitely go back to, if only just to see those colourful roofs one more time. Then, of course, there was our US road trip where we visited 11 states on a very inefficient route all the way from Chicago to Seattle. We hit up Green Bay, the Midwest, Colorado. Monument Valley was amazing. Vegas. We watched Eurovision in a gay bar in San Francisco. All the way up the coast to Portland, where I truly feel like I found my people. And then Dave took me up the Space Needle for my golden birthday, which is not a euphemism, but definitely sounds like one. Yeah, if I can only pick one holiday to do again, it's that one. Unless going to actual Eurovision counts as a destination, in which case I might pick that. And on that note, how long have you been a Eurovision fan and what type of music is your favourite? Okay, so I've watched Eurovision literally ever since I can remember, and I'm not sure why because no one in my family seems to like it these days, so I don't know why we watched it or whose idea that was, but I was sold as a kid. I remember when we won in '97, I just sat on my bedroom floor just grinning for the whole night until I fell asleep. I was so happy. I didn't go full-on super fan though until I'd moved in with Dave, because having someone to watch it with is just so much better than sitting watching it on your computer screen alone, especially if they are willing to sit through the semis as well. My favourite music? Tricky. I mean, it's rock. But the problem is that's obviously quite a broad genre. But the other problem is I like pretty much all kinds of rock, so I guess that. But I also like a lot of other things as well. I don't know, I'm pretty open-minded. I really like to dance, so if it has a beat to it and it makes me want to dance, that's me in. Now, if you lose the Eurovision sweepstakes, do you receive a bag of male genitalia? Okay, this is in reference to the last place punishment in our fantasy football league, but you know what? She did submit this via the question sticker, so I have to answer. The answer is no. I'm not made of money for last place punishments, Jed. Oh wow, how upset will I be when a Eurovision predictions noob beats me on Saturday? Scale of 1 to 10, Marie, really? 27. This is war. Okay, I'm pretty sure I got through everybody's questions there. If I did somehow manage to miss yours, please let me know and I will answer at the beginning of my next video just for you. This was a long video and I need to go start editing ASAP. So all I'll say is thank you very much to everyone who sent in a question. Some of those really made me laugh. I hope I answered them to your satisfaction, and you never know, maybe we'll do this again when we hit 5k subs. A girl can dream. I will be back soon with some more crafty nonsense, so in the meantime have a brilliant rest of your day and keep making cool stuff.